Hey everybody, and welcome to the Stitch Sessions. It's February's Gift of Crochet reveal today, and this is our special Gift of Crochet. We have the Bunny Draft Blocker, and as you can see, it's great to put up against windows, to draft, to block drafts, and with our little bunny in the center, it looks super, super cute. So we're going to show you how to make the legs, which act as the draft blocker, along with the body, the head and the ears. And you can embellish it in whichever way you like. And I think it's super, super cute, and it adds for great decor, as well as functions really well in any window or door, actually. If you want to use it as a door draft blocker, you can certainly do that. So why don't we grab all of our materials and let's get started. Okay, so we are going to start on our draft blocking bunny. We are going to need approximately 100 to 150 grams of cotton yarn. Now I'm using approximations because I bought this really huge ball. I think it was about 300 or 350 grams of cotton. And so of this particular colorway. So I've got a lot left over, so that's what I'm using. So definitely you want to use cotton, because this, if you're using it for the draft blocker that we are doing, it's most likely going to be on windowsills that may have moisture, may have dust, on floors, in front of doors. So cotton is great because it does absorb moisture, and you'll be able to just throw it in the wash if you want to. So it's great. You'll need your cotton yarn, pair of scissors, a darning needle for sewing in your ends, and a crochet hook. And for this project, I'm going to be using a 5mm hook. Just because I'd like to have a little bit of a tighter gauge on the cotton yarn. Okay, so here we go. So in order to begin, we want to start with a magic circle or a cinch circle. So we're going to loop the yarn around, insert our hook, pull through, and chain one to secure. Okay, get rid of our tail here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do 6 single crochets into our circle. So you'll insert, pull through, and I'm going to call that 1. Okay, even though we've chained 1, to me, that's a full single crochet. So we insert, pull through, and there's 2. It's always a bit tricky the first round because everything is very loose and it's not steady yet. So just be patient. Here's 3. 4, and you want to make sure you are working over that tail because we are going to use that to cinch it shut. Here is 5, and here is 6. Okay, so you've got your little tail here, and now you just pull it tight, and it cinches your circle nice and tight. Okay, and now we are going to slip stitch to join. And so I'm going to go right into the top of that single crochet. Because single crochets are so much shorter, that's why I didn't want to do another chain 1 to try and find here. So there we go. So there we have our first round. It's 6 single crochets. Okay, so into the next round, what we're going to do is we're going to increase our circle. So you want to chain 1, and now we're going to do 2 single crochets into each and every stitch all the way around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the base of this one right here, and it does get very tight in the beginning here, so just again be patient. So I insert, one, and back into that same stitch. So I have 2. Okay, and now I go over to the next stitch, which is right here, and 2 single crochets. So you're going to do this into each and every stitch all the way around, and that will then give you 12 single crochets. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of this round. Okay, once you've done 2 into each and every single stitch, you're going to want to slip stitch to join. So we will be working in the spiral round here, but just because we're only increasing for a couple of rows, I am just going to join it like a traditional slip stitch join. Okay, so there we have round 2, and you should have 12 stitches. Now we're going to increase for only one more round, but this will depend on you how fat, I guess, or thick you would like the legs of your bunny. Now I've already done one here, so mine, I guess I would say about 1.5 inches in width that I've done my legs. So that's why I only needed 3 rounds for myself. If you want something a bit thicker, then you might want to do a 4th round. But I really felt that 3 rounds was plenty. So we're going to chain 1. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch to start. So back in. And now in the next stitch, we're only going to do 1 single crochet. So now the pattern will be 2, 1, 2, 1, meaning 2 single crochets in this stitch, 1 in the next. 2 single crochets in the next stitch, 1 in the next. So that's why we have the 2, 1, 2, 1. At the end, you should end up with 18 stitches in total. Okay, so I've just done a single, an individual one. So in the next stitch, I want to do 2 single crochets. And it's going to be a little tight here. So there is my second one. Now in the next stitch, I'm only going to do 1. Okay, so I'm going to have 2 here, a second one, and then a single one. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end when we've slip stitched, and then we can talk about how we're going to continue on. Okay, so you should end up with 18 stitches at the end. And we're back, guys. We've done our 18 stitches, and you don't actually have to slip stitch now because we are going to continue on in the spiral round. But just because I'm funny like that, I am going to slip stitch just because I like to make sure that this is nicely sectioned off. So there we go. So this is kind of the bottom of my bunny's foot, I guess you can say. So if I take this one, and I was just to show you there, that's basically what we've created. And then we're going to continue on in the spiral. Okay, so that means we're not going to slip stitch to join. We're just going to keep going. So I'm going to show you what that is. So we're going to chain 1 like we've done before, and we're going to single crochet into the next stitch. And that is basically now all you're going to do for rounds and rounds and rounds is 1 single crochet into each and every stitch all the way around. Now, the number of rounds you do is going to vary on what you're using this for. If you're using it for a door, keeping in mind that you're going to have 2 legs to the bunny, I think the average width of a door is, if I'm not mistaken, it's 36 inches. No, it's probably more than that. It might be 48. So you might need 24 inches in length. So you would just do rows and rows and rows and rows until your leg reaches the length that you desire. So for me, my my window panes are 48 inches in length. So I know one of my bunny legs, I would like it to be 24 inches, even if it's 23, because we're going to leave a little space for the body as well. But I know that that's the length that I want to get to for myself, because 24 and 24 is 48, and that will give me a nice amount of coverage. Now you might actually want it to be a little bit longer if you want your stopper to go beyond the window, just to really solidify the fact that, you know, you want to block any extra drafts or anything like that. So yeah, so that's the great thing about this project. It's really, you can customize it to whatever length you wish. So here I'm coming up, you can see, it's already starting to kind of curve up because I didn't increase anymore. So that means I no longer want it to lay flat. I want it to start curving up. So as we come to the end, we're not going to worry about slip stitching anymore. We're just going to continue on into the very next stitch, which is right there. I believe that's where chain 1 was. And again, this is the thing sometimes with cotton yarn. It can be a little bit tight sometimes to work into, but that's what we love about it, because we know it's very secure when you want to do things like creating a draft blocker. Okay, and then into the very next stitch, which is right there. I'm just going to keep going on now. Bloody hell. So I'm just going to continue on now, and I'm going to set you loose. So this is pretty straightforward. You're just going to single crochet forever and ever, and this is kind of nice in a way, because this is a project that you can, when you're working on this part, you can just sit in front of the TV, watch your favorite Netflix show, listen to a great podcast, and you don't even have to do much thinking. You can just kind of zone out a little bit, and off you go on this project. It's stuff like this that's great for just letting your mind wander, and it's a little meditative, which is great. Okay, so this is now, I've got you started on doing your bunny legs. So see, you can see it's already starting to curl up. Okay guys, so I'm going to set you loose to go on and do the amount of rows that you need to whatever length you desire. And once you have your, well, I'm going to meet you at the end of this one, because just before we start talking about the body, I am going to talk about how we're going to add a little flap to the top end of your legs so that it can be attached to the body. And the reason why I'm going to do that is so that your legs can be separatable, I guess, from the body, so that if you do want to just toss it in the wash, you can. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you once you have your 2 legs done, or even at the end of 1 leg, and I'll talk to you about that little tab at the top. Okay guys, once you've got your bunny legs the length that you would like, so in my case I have made mine 24 inches in length, because that is the length of one of my window panes. What you want to do now is create a little buttonhole, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to just fasten it closed with a button, and that way if I ever want to throw this cover in the wash, I can just take the stuffing out and throw it in the wash pretty easily. So what I'm going to do here is I now have just made sure that these sides here are nice and even. Again, I haven't counted the number of rows because there's just so many. So I just make sure that wherever I am that I can see that it actually is evenly done at the end here. And I know that I do have 18 stitches around because that was the number of stitches that we ended off our increases with. So what I'm going to do is 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and now I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2. Then what I want to do is skip 2 stitches. So I'm skipping 1 and I'm skipping 2 and inserting into the next. So you see that creates a nice little hole there. And that will be perfect. If I grab my button here and just make sure that it fits snugly. I don't want it to be loose, so it's going to fit beautifully. Okay, and you can use any different kinds of buttons you like. I just happen to have a whole package lying around here. So now I am going to do another 2 single crochets, 1, 2. So that's given me a total of 6 that I've worked across here. And now I'm going to keep doing another 12 all the way around. So I'm just going to work 12 more double crochets, and that's going to give me a total of 18. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of 18. Once I've done an additional 12 to give me the full 18, what I'm going to do now is I am going to chain 1. So I finished, I chained 1 and I'm turning my work now. So we're going to jump out of working in the round right now. So what we're going to do is we've chained 1, and now into each of the next 9 stitches I'm going to do a single crochet, and I'm going to go right away into this stitch right here. So I'm now breaking out of the round motif. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and one more makes 9. So you can see now that there is a definite flap here, okay? And so what I'm doing, so I've created a buttonhole so that I can place a button on the inside like that, and then place it through, and that will seal off my leg here. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little bit of a flap here with another buttonhole, because that is how we are going to attach these legs to the bunny body. So I'm going to do one more row here. I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and I'm going to do a single crochet all the way across into each stitch. Okay, and I am going to go immediately into this very first stitch. We almost never do that depending on the job or the project you're working on, but in this case I am going to go right ahead and use every single stitch here. Okay, so 1 single crochet into each stitch going across here, and now we've got one more visible stitch there. Whoops, sometimes the lighting here is funny. Oh, this one's being a little bit tricky to find. There we go. Okay, so you can really see now that the flap is taking shape. So I'm going to turn my work. I will chain 1. Now I'm going to do 3 double crochet. I'm sorry, I'm going to do 3 single double. Wow, I can't talk today. I'm going to do 3 single crochets, 1 in each of the next 3 stitches. So this time I am going to skip this one. I'm going to go into the very next one, and that's the first one. Here is the second one, and here is the third one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches. So if I pull my work apart, you can see there, I'm skipping 1, 2, and into the very next one I will do a single crochet, single, and a single. See, so you can see that nice little buttonhole forming there. Okay, and then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to just do 1 more row just to reinforce this little buttonhole here. Okay. Now I could have made it a much closer to here, but I don't want it to interfere with this button that I'm going to place in here to seal off. So that is why I'm doing another round. So I'm going to go right away into the first one again this time. Second one. And now third one. And now where I've created a hole or a space, I'm just going to go right into that space, and I'm going to single crochet twice. So I'm going to insert again. And now I'm just going to continue and find the next stitch, single crochets, and the next stitch, single crochet. I'm going to fit 1 more in here. And there you have it. So this is how I'm forming my first leg. So you're going to do 2 of these, which I have already worked on another one as well. Okay, so you're going to do 2 of these, and then you want to create a buttonhole in the top to seal in your stuffing, and then you want to create a buttonhole to attach this to your bunny body. Now, if you want to sew your leg in onto the bunny body, that's totally up to you. In fact, if you didn't want to make a bunny at all and just wanted to create this as your draft blocker, you are more than welcome to do that too. But I thought it would be kind of really cute and sweet to create a bunny for our theme, and would make it also a really unusual and creative gift. So now we're finished, and we will snip our yarn, fasten off, and you can weave in your little tail here. So what I'm going to do actually, so that I can actually throw this in the wash if I want to, I have an old pair of long tube socks that I'm going to stuff with old socks and t-shirts and all kinds of things. So I've got some bits and bobs here. So these old socks and t-shirt material. So I just kind of, what I do is as they wear out, I save them. I cut them sometimes in strips or blocks because I like to be able to use them as part of stuffing in things like this, especially because t-shirts and old t-shirts and socks just have a little bit more substance to them and will give them a little bit of weight. Now, the other thing I personally am going to do, not everybody would do this, but because I want to add a little bit of weight, I have all kinds of these stones that it used to be in vogue to have, like, I don't know, just crystal bowls full of these kind of stones that were glass, basically. So I've had these for a million years. I don't use them in that fashion anymore, and I thought, oh, this would be a great idea. So I'm actually going to mix this in with some of my scrap t-shirts and socks, just to add a little bit of weight inside of here. So when I place it against a window or even the base of a door, it'll just give it that much more weight and blockage from the air. So that is how I'm going to get the legs started. Now let's move on to working onto our bunny body. This is the really fun part. Okay guys, we are moving on to the body of our bunny. So we are going to grab our yarn. I have loads of this wonderful cotton yarn. And we're going to start with a cinch circle. And what we're going to do is just chain one to secure it. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we are going to single crochet 8 times into this circle. So I actually like to chain one again after I've secured and then begin my stitch. So I'm going to insert and then the second one. So remember, anytime you start a cinch circle and you're stitching in, the circle is always a little bit wobbly and not quite cooperative, so patience is the key here. Okay, so you're going to do 8 of these single crochets. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. So once you've got your 8 single crochets, you're going to take your little tail and you're going to pull it, and you'll have to pull a little bit more. That will cinch it shut. And then what you're going to do is you are going to slip stitch to your first single crochet stitch to join the round. So we are working in the round again here. Now, cotton yarn sometimes gets a little bit funny there. So there we go. So we've created our first little circle. This one consists of 8 single crochets and will give us a total of 8 stitches. Now we're going to go for a few rounds working in the flat round is what I like to call it. And we are going to keep increasing, and we're going to slip stitch to join each row for the first few rows. So we are going on to round 2. We need to chain 1, and into the base of this same stitch we're going to do another single crochet. Okay. And now remember, the chain 1 counts as 1. So we are going to consider that as having 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Because we're increasing this round, we need to do 2 single crochets into every stitch. So I will find the next stitch, which is right here, and I will do 1 single crochet, and then right back into that same stitch I will do 2. I will do a second one. Okay, so there's 2 into the same stitch. I identify the next stitch, which is right there, and I work 2 single crochets into that stitch. 1 and 2. And it's a bit tight because it's the first round, and it's smaller stitches, but hang in there. So now I'm going to find my next stitch, which is right here, and same thing. So I'm going to do 2 single crochets into this. So that's 1, that's 2. There you have it. So keep going all the way around, 2 stitches into each stitch, and then you're going to have a total of 16 stitches all together, and you should be ready to slip stitch to your very first stitch to join your round, but I will meet you there. And once you've done your 16 single crochets, and make sure you count your stitches, you're going to find the top of that chain 1. So this is the single crochet, and the chain 1 is right here, and you're going to insert your hook. It's going to be probably a bit tight. And you're going to slip stitch to join. There we go. So then I just pull through. It's nice and tight in there. Pull through and slip stitch. Okay. Round 2 is finished. So you have 16 stitches. Now for round 3, we're going to chain 1, and now what's going to happen is we're going to move into the next stitch, and we are going to do 2 stitches into the next stitch. So not at the base like we did before. We're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch. So this round is still an increasing round. This is what keeps our circle somewhat flat, which is what we want for the bottom of our bunny body. So we've done 2, but now in the next stitch, we're going to do 1 single crochet. So our pattern will now work as follows. You're going to do 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And then in the following stitch, you will do 1 single crochet. So now we are working into the next stitch. We're going to work 2 single crochets into the next stitch. It's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, all the way back around. Now remember that chain 1 we did here, and then we went into the next stitch. This chain 1 counts as 1. So your last stitch that you will work should be 2 into the last stitch, 2 single crochets. And if you're ever uncertain, count the number of stitches. Round 3 should end up with 24 stitches in total. Okay, so I'm going to do one more set with you. So I'm finding I just did a single one in the previous. So in the next stitch, I'm going to do 2 single crochets, 1, and then back in for 2. And in the next one, I'm going to do a single. So I'm going to leave you to it, and then we shall meet back up when we're just about ready to slip stitch to join. And I'm coming up to my very last stitch, which I'm going to slip stitch into. Oh, it's a little bit tight. And the end of round 3 should give you 24 stitches in total. And I have counted and I have 24. So we're going to work another round. So we're going into round 4. You'll chain 1. And now what you're going to do is we are going to single crochet into the base of that same stitch. So last time I didn't do that, this time I will. And I like to alternate when I do that. So some rounds I do, some rounds I don't, and I always do 1 on, 1 off. So I'm going to single crochet back into that same stitch. Remember, your chain 1 already counts as 1. So you technically have 2 stitches in that one. And now the pattern is going to be to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So I've got 1, and then in the next one I've got 1 again. Now in the next one I should be putting 2 single crochets. So in and 2. Okay, and now single crochet 1 only into the next stitch, single crochet 1 only into the next stitch, and now into the next stitch I do 2 again. So basically our pattern now for round 4 is to single crochet 1, single crochet 1, single crochet 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, and the same thing all the way around. At the end of round 4, you're going to have 32 stitches. So let's do that, and I'll meet you there when we've done 32 stitches. Row 4 is done, and so you should be able to see that there's a nice circular shape taking place. And I've made sure I have 32 stitches, and I'm going to find the top of my chain and I'm going to slip stitch to join. We're moving on to round 5 now, and at the end of round 5 we want 40 stitches in total. So now we're going to chain 1, and I'm going to go into the next stitch and do 2 single crochets. Remember, your chain 1 already counts as 1. And now into each of the next 3 stitches, I'm going to do a single crochet. Okay, so the pattern now is to do in sets of 3. So 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to do 2 inside the next stitch. So back in, and I do a second one. Okay, so for round 5, your pattern is to do 1, 2, 3 single crochets individually, and then 2. 1, 1, 1, 2. All the way around to give you 40 stitches. You know what to do. I will meet you there. Okay, the end of round 5. I'm going to slip stitch. I have 40 stitches, and we are going into round 6, still increasing. Okay, so you're going to chain 1, and now into the base of that same stitch, because you know I always alternate every other row where I go back into that same stitch to start. I will single crochet. Remember, your chain 1 counts as 1. So keep in mind, because your chain 1 counts as 1, you want to be careful not to stitch it too tightly, because then that'll make it tricky for you to slip stitch. So technically that counts as 2 stitches. Now into the very next stitch, we are going to do individual single crochets into the next 4 stitches. So we single crochet once, a second time into the next one, into the third, and into the fourth. Okay, now I'm going to do 2 into the next stitch. 1 and 2. Now I'm going to single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So at the end of round 6, you should have 48 stitches in total. So I think you get the gist of this formula now. I've just done 4 single crochets, 1 into each of the 4, and now I'm going to do 2 into the next one. Okay, and the pattern will repeat like that. Now as your circle gets a little bit bigger, and because these are tighter stitches like single crochets, don't fret about these little corners coming up. That will all smooth out once we start building up our bunny. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 6. Okay, the end of round 6, we're going to slip stitch into that first chain 1, and we now should have 48 stitches and 6 rounds. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to do one more round, which is round 7. So we will chain 1 to begin. And in the very next stitch, we're going to insert 2 single crochets into that stitch. And now you may have guessed that the pattern keeps increasing these spaces between the double stitches. So in the last row we did 4 singles, 4 individual stitches before we increased again. In this round we're going to do 5. So a single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches before we do an increase. So in the next stitch right here we have a 1 single crochet. This is 2. Into the next we have 3. Into the next we have 4. And then 5. Okay, and so this one is going to have the increase, which is 2 single crochets. Okay, and now we continue on. We do 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 and then your increase. At the end of row 7 you should have 56 stitches in total. So I will meet you at the end of your 56 stitches. Okay, at the end of round 7 you should have something that looks like this. I'm going to flatten it out. And you should have a total of 56 stitches all the way around. This will play now the base of my bunny's body. So if I grab one of my legs here, then I am going to be attaching, that's why I put the buttonhole, the legs to the body once we build it up. Okay, so now for round 8, we will no longer be slip stitching after this. We're just going to work in the spiral round. Now I would recommend to help you find your rounds better to use a stitch marker to remember where the beginning and end of your round is if you have a hard time remembering where the start is. Okay, so I've got a little stitch marker here that I am going to put in. This is where I slip stitched, so I know that this is the end of my previous row. And let's see. Sorry guys about the focus, I'm not sure what's going on there. And there is my slip stitch. Okay, so that is slip stitched into my last stitch there. And now we're going to start round 8, which is going to be the beginning of our spiral rounds. Okay, so I will chain 1. And when we work in the spiral round, it just means that we no longer slip stitch to join. So yeah, so you're seeing now it's laying flat, and now I'm just going to keep going around and around, and there are no more increases right now. So that means we're not going to come across any more double stitches into one. We're going to do a 1 single crochet. So I've chained 1 into the very next stitch. I'm going to do 1 single crochet, and literally it's 1 into each and every stitch all the way around until you come back to your stitch marker. So there are no increases here. Go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to come back and I'll meet you at the I'll meet you at the stitch marker just to show you how you're just going to continue on to do a single crochet for a few more rows. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you back here shortly. Okay guys, we're coming up to the end of my round here, and I'm just working another single crochet. Now remember, this stitch marker is in the last stitch of the previous row, so I'm just going to take it out for a second, and I'm going to work a single crochet into it. Okay, and now I'm just, instead of slip stitching, I'm going to go right ahead into that next stitch, and I'm just going to do a single crochet. So what that's done is it's allowed me to kind of just bump up to the next round. And then I'm going to grab my stitch marker and I'm going to put it back into the bottom of the last stitch of the previous row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one here because that's going to help me just a easier visual to understand how many rows I did after my increase. So technically we've done the one that it's in now is row 1, round 1 of the non-increase rounds. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm just going to continue on for several more rounds, just doing a single crochet into each and every stitch all the way around. So basically I have put a I put a stitch marker in the first row of the previous round. The next time I come around, which actually I should have done now, so this stitch marker won't move. This will count as the first row or round of my non-increasing round. Now this stitch marker I'm going to put in the very first stitch here of the next row. Let's see if I can work this properly. It's a funny stitch marker. So that way I know where the end of the next spiral round is, because there won't be any slip stitches. So this one will continue to move up with me, with every round I do. And then I'll be able to count how many rounds from here to the top I have. So the next time I come around to here, I won't slip stitch, I'll just single crochet and then move this stitch marker up into the next round. So what I'm aiming to do here is rows of just single crochets in each and every single stitch. So just continue on with your single crochets. Now this part's kind of easy in the sense that we don't have to worry about increasing or how many stitches in between. It's just a single crochet, one into each and every single stitch all the way around for rounds and rounds until you get to round, and then we will talk about what to do from there. And you'll notice as your rounds progress, it will start to curl. Well, first of all, it'll start to do this. So you always want to work from the outside. So your work will start to curl as you increase your rounds, number of rounds. So you just want to flatten out the bottom, and then your work is going to curl this way after all of your rounds are completed. So that is the way you want to do it. So I'm going to let you loose, and I will meet you back here very shortly. Once you have 12 rows, your work should look a little something like this. So it's now sitting on its own here, and it's got a bit of height to it. So I think now you can make yours as tall as you like, but I think I'm going to make my bunny kind of stout, if you will say. So now we're going to work on some decreasing. So I'm just going to keep that stitch marker there because that's the end of my last round. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue with single crochets, but now every 5th stitch I'm going to decrease. So I'll take you through what that means. So we're going to single crochet in once, in the next, 2, 3, 4, and now this is going to be the 5th. So to decrease means that we want to decrease the number of stitches we're going to end up having. So what we want to do is we want to pull these 2 stitches together. So we're going to insert our hook, pull through, but don't resolve the single crochet yet. You're going to go into the next stitch, insert, yarn over, pull through. So you've got 3 loops on your hook, and now you'll yarn over and pull through all 3. So you can see that that has bunched those 2 together and created 1 stitch at the top. Okay, so that's what we call a decrease. So I'm going to do that again with you. So we have 1, I'm going to do 4 stitches in total, 2, 3, 4, and now we're going to do a decrease. We're going to insert our hook into the next one, pull through, don't resolve it, find the next stitch to insert your hook, pull through, 3 loops will be on your hook, you'll yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops, which will leave you with only 1 stitch. So you can see that these 2 stitches here have now been bunched together. Okay, and I'll do that one more time and then I'll set you loose. So we're going to do 1 single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches, and in the 5th we're going to decrease it with the next stitch next to it, and we're going to keep repeating that pattern until we come back to where our stitch marker was, and that's how we'll know we're at the end of the round. So the next stitch is a single crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now the next one is a decrease. Insert, pull through, go right away to the next stitch, insert, pull through, 3 loops will be on your hook. You can see they're into each of these 2 stitches. Yarn over and pull through all of them. And that is a decrease stitch. Okay, so go ahead and do that all the way, and I will meet you back at the stitch marker. So I'm back to the beginning, and I ended with a decrease here, and I put the stitch marker there. So this is marking the end of the full round. So when we had done our increases, you should have had 56 stitches. So each round should have continued to have 56 stitches. Now, a funny story, somehow I ended up with 54 stitches, which this is not an uncommon story, especially when you're working in the spiral, or sometimes when you're going from your increase rounds to your regular rounds. Somewhere, somehow, a stitch tends to get dropped. So as long as you understand your math, you're pretty much okay. It does not change too much of what's going on, but I wanted you guys to understand that these things do happen. So if that happens to you, it's not the end of the world. But if you had 56 stitches and you did this decrease that we just did, which is stitching 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches and then doing a decrease, you should have ended up with 47 stitches now in this round. So if you had 56, you should have 47. In my case, because I had 54, I now have 45. So as long as you understand where you are in your math, you should still be fine. So I'm going to continue on with mine because it's still nice and round and it looks just how I like it. So we're going to continue on with some more decreases because now we want this, this body now to start curving in. I'm going to do a few more rows of decreases, but before we get too far, I'm also going to talk about sewing a button on each end of the body so that you can attach your legs if you like. Now, some people might actually want to sew their legs right onto the body of the bunny. That is totally up to you. I kind of like the idea of mine being in a couple of different parts. So the next round that we are going to do is we are going to single crochet 1 into each of the next 3 stitches. So this one right here is the one the decrease just came out of, so we do not work into that one. The next stitch for me is right there. So I count 1, 2, 3, and now I'm going to do my decrease here. So this time it's every 4th stitch will decrease. Okay, and pull through all 3. So we're going to do that again. Into the next stitch is 1, 2, 3, and now a decrease. We insert our hook, yarn over to pull through. We do not resolve that stitch yet because we're going to go into the next stitch, insert our hook, yarn over to pull through. So that gives us 3 loops on the hook. We yarn over and pull through all 3. And there you have it starting to decrease there. Okay, so go ahead with this round. You're going to do 3 single crochets and then a decrease. 3 and then a decrease. And I'll meet you back at the stitch marker. All right, and I'm back around with my stitch marker in its new spot. So this should be technically row number 14. And when when I say 14, I mean 14 from when we stopped increasing. So if you look at the bottom, all these rows were increasing rows. That's what makes it sit flat. These rows from here on out, we started counting 12 rows continuously, and then row 13 we started to decrease, and row 14. So when I say we're on row 14, that's what I mean. 14 from the build-up. So in round 14 at the very end, I have ended up with 36 stitches because I decreased after I've stitched 3. So every 4 stitch had a decrease. If you had 56 before the decrease, you should have 38. Okay, so this is just so everybody can keep track. Now you can already see that it's starting to curve inward. So I'm going to take the time now to actually sew 1 button on each side here, and just before it starts closing up too much and it gets cumbersome. So I just found a bunch of buttons here. I just made sure that it did fit through that hole opening that we made in the legs. And I'm just going to put 1 on each side here where I think I'd like to see the legs coming out. Now keep in mind that this is a draft blocker, so you don't want the legs to start from here, because if your bunny is sitting against the ledge, you see the ledge is here, and there's going to be a big gap if the end of the leg starts here and the window ledge is here. So you actually want your buttons a little bit closer together. So for example, I might even do kind of 2 on the back here. So those tabs from the legs will sit in the back and go across the window here. So I just grabbed one of my legs here that I've already stuffed. So what I did with this is I filled it completely with the glass rocks, which gives it nice weight and actually does wonders to block the draft. And then at the top is where I stuffed little bits of old t-shirt and things here. So I'm going to seal that off shortly too. I have to weave in my tail here. But so what I'm saying is I'm going to place my buttons closer to the back so that this tab here will fit there. So, and that's how it's going to look. So your leg is going to stick out from there. Okay, so that's the effect. So just keep that in mind when you're sewing your buttons on. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I will meet up with you when we've got the 2 buttons on, and we will continue to work the rest of our body. Okay guys, so I've done my buttons. I've gone ahead and sewn them on. You can see that they're quite close together. And so if I grab one of my legs here, the end here, so I experimented so you can see that it's going to sit snugly this way. So this is the part that's going to be leaning against the window in my case, or door, whatever you're making it for. Here's the other one. I still have to sew in my ends. But let's just make sure these buttons fit nicely. And that is perfection. So I like how they sit closely together. And so that way the bunny will be in the front, and this is sitting snugly against the window ledge. And this is actually a perfect little gap here because this is where the two panes join. So, pretty darn cool. So let me just take this off. So that worked out perfectly. And now you're also noticing that I've got some stuff in here. So this is just like old socks and t-shirt bits. So make sure to wash them, of course. So when they've kind of come to the end of their life, I like to save them, and I cut them into strips, and these make for great stuffing. So especially if you're doing something like maybe you're doing a toy or amigurumi, I can never pronounce that, for a child, and maybe these are not as tight. Sometimes when you use that polyfill, it's too easy for the little one to kind of pull it out through the holes. So sometimes that's why having some t-shirts, old pieces of fabric, it actually gives it a sturdier feel as well. And it's less risk of having that stuff pull out. But in this case, this is also really good because it's a great draft blocking material. So this is just old socks and t-shirts, and I decided to start filling some of it now because we're going to do another row of decreasing, and I don't want to have to worry about fiddling with it once the opening is closed a little bit extra tight. So like we said before, I have 36 stitches around. You may have 38 if you didn't lose a stitch like I did. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do another round of decreasing. This is round 15 now, and we're going to follow the same recipe, I like to call it, or the same pattern. So I kind of did it a little bit here as well. So this is the end of my last round, which is round 14. And I'm going to continue again doing one single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches and then decreasing the next. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on from there. And you've already done this, but I'll do this one more time with you. So you just insert your hook into the very next stitch, pull through. That's one single crochet into the next stitch, another single crochet. This is the third one. And now we're going to decrease the 4th one. So that means you're going to insert your hook to pull through, but you will not resolve that stitch. You insert in the next one, pull through again, you'll have the 3 loops on your hook. Now you'll yarn over and pull through all 3 stitches. And so what that does is it snuggles that together. So go ahead and do that for round 15. You've already done this for round 14, so I'm going to set you loose, and then I will meet you back at the end of round 15. Okay, so I have done my decrease stitch again for another row. So I now have 28 stitches all the way around. You may have 30. And I can't stress that it's enough in projects like this. You know, if you're off by 1 stitch or 2, the crochet police are not going to come to get you. So it's all, as long as the shape is taking the form that it needs to take, you're a-okay. It's a little different if we're making things like scarves, even, or hats or things like that, where you need to make sure that it looks even and it sits evenly. But this is just a little draft blocker, so we're okay with that. So I have 28 stitches. You may have 30. You may have 29, and that's okay too. As long as you can see that it's starting to really curl in. So I'm making my bunny kind of a little bit stout here. So it's a little bit shorter. So I just like to, sometimes when working in the round, I don't use stitch markers because I frankly get a little lazy. But I'm pretty good at counting, but this time around there's so much going on, I like using them. Just makes my life easier. Okay, so now For round 16, we're just going to do one single crochet into each and every stitch all the way around. There's no increasing or decreasing. We're just doing a little solid row to keep things nice and uniform. So just do that all the way around. Round 16, and you should still end up with whatever count that you ended up with at the end of round 15. So for me, I should still end up with 28 stitches. And here we are again. So it's starting to curl in nicely. I've got my stuffing in there. And so now we're going on to round 17, and we are going to decrease again. So what we're trying to do is just close in the body portion in order to start making the head of our bunny. So what we're going to do is, let me just move this stitch marker here. We are going to go back to our same formula of decreasing that we've been using so far. So that is to do one single crochet in each of the next 3 stitches. That's 2 and that's 3. And then decrease the next 2 together. Okay, so you already know how this works, so go ahead, do that all the way around. This is round 17, and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, so I've gone down from 28 to 22 stitches with my decrease. I'm going to stay again with that same pattern, and oh, where's my stitch marker? There it is. So this is now going on to round 18. Now, if you wanted to make your bunny taller, you would have just kept doing more rows, but I think you want to be careful with that. If this is a draft blocker, you don't want the actual bunny to be too tall because it might fall over. So you definitely want to have it sturdy, and that's why I'm making mine a stout bunny. So row 17, we're going to do another decrease because we're closing in the body here just a bit more. And the same pattern I'm going to do here. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3, and a decrease in the next. 3 and resolve. So do that all the way around, and I'll meet you again at the end of row 18. Alrighty, you've come to the end of round 18, and funny enough, I have 18 stitches. You may have 20. We've had this discussion already. The main idea is to close in a little bit further the top. We're going to do, I believe, if I remember, one more. We're going to do one more decrease round. This time we're only going to single crochet 1 into each of the next 2 and then decrease. Okay, so to make sure I put my stitch marker back in there so I don't get lost as to where I am. These are actually the most terriblest stitch markers. Little review there, don't get these. Okay, so we're going to do 2 single crochets, 1, 2, and then decrease here, 2 together. Okay, so we're going to do this pattern all the way around. For round 19, it's 2 single crochets and then a decrease. So go ahead and do that, and I will meet you at the end of round 19. Alrighty, at the end of round 19, you should have 14, well, I have 14 stitches. You might have 16, you may have 17, because that's the nature of this thing. It loses stitches here and there, but you can see that this, the body's closing in quite nicely here. Now, you might want to, which I might do, just add a wee bit more stuffing in here just to make it a little bit more solid. And this is the part where, this is the time to do it, because once you start going into the head area of the bunny, then it starts getting trickier. This might be a bit big, but let's see what I've got here. Yeah, there we go. So remember, don't throw out those old socks. Just wash them and put them away. You never know when they're going to come in handy for something. There we go. I like that a little bit better. Okay, so for round 20, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a regular round with 1 single crochet in each stitch. And then we're going to talk about creating the head. So we're going to go back to increasing again to make the head. So right now, just go ahead and do 1 single crochet into each and every single stitch all the way around. So for me, that's still going to give me 14 stitches. You might have 15 or 16, and that's okay. And then we'll meet back up and we'll talk about moving on to creating the head of our bunny blocker. And we're ready to start the head. So there's our little buttons in the back. I've got my 14 stitches on the top now. We've decreased, so now you can see the stuffing sits nice and snugly in there. And so now we're going to start increasing again to create the head shape. So I have 14 stitches. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do an increase into each and every single stitch around. So that means we're going to place 2 single crochets into every stitch, which will give me 28 stitches at the end. So I always keep my stitch marker in there for me so I can remember where the start and end is when I'm doing work in the spiral round. And I always put it at the end, so my last stitch is in the stitch marker here. So I am just going to start my first single crochet here. So the first stitch after the stitch marker. So that stitch is already worked. I'm going to go into this one and I'm going to place 2 single crochets in there. So there is 1, and back into the same stitch we're going to do the second one. Okay, so that will increase the number of stitches now to 2 inside that 1 stitch. So I'll go into the next one. Insert your hook and do 1 single crochet, and now insert back into the same one and do a second one. So we've increased that stitch again. So the cool thing about this project is you're really going to get a chance to practice increasing stitches and decreasing stitches. So to form the bottom, we increased stitches, then we kept them the same going up. Then to close in the top, we decreased stitches, and now we're back to increasing stitches. So it's a great project for practicing that. Okay, so go all the way around until you get to the end of your round, and we will continue from there. So right now, it's 2 stitches into every stitch all the way around. And you should have something that looks a little bit like this, so you can see it almost looks like a little spout of a jug. So you can see it's starting to expand again. I do have 28 stitches because I had 14 when I first started. So this is my last stitch here. So I'm going to place the stitch marker in there. And I'm going to continue to increase. So you can make the size of your head as big as you want. Some people will keep it small and narrow. I think because I'm making a little bit of a chubby bunny, I'm going to make his head a little bit thicker around. So I'm going to keep increasing here. But this time I'm going to do 1 single crochet in the first stitch and then 2 into the next. So there's 1 single crochet and there is 2. Okay, so that will be the pattern here. 1 into the next, 2 into the one beside that. 1 and then 2. So you're going to have 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 all the way around. This should give you 42 stitches at the end. So continue on with 1 and then 2 into the next, all the way to the end, and then I will meet you there. So again, this is my stitch count because I had lost, I think, 1 stitch in the early stages here. But like I said, with a project like this, as long as you get the basic gist of the increases and decreases, you should be fine. So I'm going to have 42 stitches at the end because I had 28, and I'm increasing every second stitch. So I'll meet you guys at the end. I'm just coming up to my last stitch here, and I am going to place 2 single crochets into that last stitch. So now I should have 42 stitches all the way around. So your work should start looking something like this. So you can see it's starting to flatten out. I am going to increase for another row. So I have 42 stitches. So let me just actually put this back here so I remember where I am. And so the pattern we're going to do now is we're going to continue increasing, but we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches and then an increase. So this one's already been worked, this one right here. So we're going to go into this next one here. We're going to place 1 single crochet, and then we're going to go to the next one, which is nestled right there. And we're going to do another single crochet, and now we're going to increase into the third. So that means we're going to place 2 single crochets. Okay, so our pattern is 1, 1, and then 2. 1, 1, and 2. So that's the pattern. We're going to go all the way around. This should give you, well, it's going to give me 56 stitches. So if you guys are off by 2, you might have 58 stitches depending on if you maintained your stitch count all the way up. So for me, I have 56. I will have 56 stitches at the end of this third round of the head. Now, technically, if you're counting number of rows all the way from the bottom all the way up, we are currently beginning row 23. Okay, so if you've been keeping track of all of your rows, starting from here, or rounds, I should say, this was round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., all the way up. We're going into round 23. Okay, so go ahead with your pattern, and I'll meet you at the end. And it's again 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, so 1 into each of the next 2, and then into the third one you're going to place your increase, which is 2 single crochets. And I'll meet you there. Okay, so I have my 56 stitches at the end of round 23, and you can see that it's now, you know, spreading out a little bit and sitting flatter. So when I have a look at it, I like the width of the head. So we're going to now stop decreasing and we're going to continue on up. So now all you're going to do is you're going to do 1 single crochet into each and every single stitch. There's no more decreasing for a while. And so you're just going to find the very next stitch, which is right there, and you're going to place a single crochet. And so that's all we're going to do for this round. And in fact, you are going to repeat this for another 10 rounds until you get to the height of the head that you like. So again, that's the cool thing about something like this. It's very customizable. So if you want a taller, narrower head shape, then you might want to go up to 14 rounds, etc., etc. So that's it. That's all for now. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and I will meet you at the end. See you there. Okay, once you have done 8 rows, your work should look like this. So we have decreased in for the neck, then we created this little shape, and so you can see how it's curled up again. So I still have 56 stitches all the way around, and now I am going to start decreasing again. Okay, so I'm just going to insert my hook. So this should now be row 32 we're going to work into. Again, if you want your head to be a little bit longer, you would make more rows. For me, 8 rows was where I wanted it to be. So to decrease this next round, we are going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch for the next 6 stitches. So right away, I'm going to go into the first one here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now into the 7th stitch, we're going to do a decrease. So we're going to go into the 7th stitch, pull through. We're not going to resolve that. We're going to go into the very next stitch, which is the 8th one, pull through, and now we're going to pull through all 3. So that has brought these 2 stitches together as one. And this is the pattern for round 32. 6 single crochets and a decrease into the 7th stitch. Okay, so single crochet into each of the next 6 and then decrease, 6 and decrease. You should end up with now 48 stitches at the end of your round. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of round 32. Okay, so we've gone all the way around, decreasing in every 7th stitch, and we're going to continue decreasing here because I want my head to come in a little bit more sharply than the body did. So we are now going to do 1 single crochet in each stitch for 5 stitches, and then we're going to decrease in the 6th stitch. So we will do 1 here, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now in the 6th one we're going to pull through, and in the very next one we're going to pull through again and resolve it. So we've just decreased to these 2 stitches to 1. So now again, in this area you might start getting off a stitch here and there because as we decrease, it doesn't always come out as an even number. But as we've discussed before, once it starts closing up, it all will even out. So it's not going to throw off the pattern at all. Okay, so do this all the way around, 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 and a decrease. 5 singles and a decrease all the way until you get back to the end here. And this is now round 33 we are working on. Okay, at the end of round 33, I now have 42 stitches all the way around. And you can now see that it's starting to curl inwards to close up. So we're going to continue with the decreasing. So now we are going to, I should take my stitch marker out of there. We're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches and decrease. So you can see where I'm going here. I'm just gradually decreasing with each round. So insert, so I think you're getting the gist by now. Single crochet 1, 2, let me just put my stitch marker back in my first one here, 3, 4, and now into the 5th one I'm going to decrease here. So I'm going to insert, pull through, into the next one, insert, pull through. So that is the formula for round 34, 5 single crochets and a decrease in, I'm sorry, it's 4 single crochets and a decrease in the 5th. So you know what to do. I'll meet you at the end of round 34. Okay, we're at the end of round 34 and we're starting to close in our top now. We're going to continue on to round 35 and we're going to continue to decrease. And so this time we are going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches and decrease the 4th. So I'll start that off with you again. So this is the first one, that's 1. I just like to keep my stitch marker in there to remind me. And that's 2 and 3. And by the way, at the end of round 34, I ended up with 35 stitches, okay? So now I'm going to decrease 1, second one, and now I'll resolve that. And I'll do that again. So 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3, and the decrease. 1, 1, all the way. So you can see it's really kind of curving in quite nicely for the head. So you know what to do, and I'll meet you at the end of round 35. At the end of round 35, you should have, or I have, 28 stitches in total. We're going on to round 36, and this time we're going to do 1 single crochet in the next 2 stitches and then decrease in the 3rd. So we have 1, 2, and we're going to decrease into the 3rd. So we're really we're aiming to close up our round here. 1, 2, so that's our first one right there. Okay, so yeah, we want to close off the rounded edge of our head there. So that's what that's going to look like. It kind of looks like a bit of a snowman right now, but once we put the ears on, it will definitely look like a bunny, I promise you. So continue on till the end of round 36. It's 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and then we decrease into the 3rd and the 4th and bring them together. Okay, see you there. And at the end of round 36, I now have 21 stitches going around. So you can see that it's really taking shape here. Okay, so here's the body and here's the head. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the time to actually stuff the head before we continue to close it up anymore. So I'm going to get out my old stash here of socks and t-shirts and things. And another thing that I do too, or I have done, is anytime I have yarn that I've snipped off, I also keep all of my bits. So see all the little ends, instead of throwing them out, I keep them because these also make perfect stuffing. So I put a bit of the socks in there, and now I'm just going to put all of this stuff in here, and that way nothing goes to waste. Wow, I actually didn't realize I had accumulated so much, but this is great. Gives me great stuffing. Sometimes you wonder, is this long enough to do something with, or maybe not? Let's just put that all in there. So it's all going to good use in creating the head of our bunny. Make sure to get all the little bits in there. Actually, that's good. That's quite a bit. Okay, and then just to kind of solidify it, I'm going to put some more of my sock material in here. Man, I'm so glad I kept all of those. And I'm just going to cut up a little bit more here of this. I don't need the whole thing, so I'm just going to cut off another piece here of old socks here, just to kind of prevent those little bits from coming out. So yeah, so see, now you can see it's really started to take shape there. So now I feel really good about continuing to close in the top of my head. So I'm going to move on now to round 37, and we're going to continue to decrease. So now we're going to do a decrease in every second stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to single crochet into one stitch and then decrease two together. Crochet one, decrease two together. And now you're really going to see it starting to close in around the top. So as usual, I'll do the first couple with you. Whoops. So we're almost there, gang. Okay, so we have one single crochet, and then we're going to decrease the next two together. One, and there's two. Okay, so let me just bring that down a little wee bit there. So I'll do that one more time. Single crochet once, and then you're going to decrease the next two together. Okay, so you can really see that the stitches are now starting to come in. So do that all the way around, and I will meet you at the end of round 36. At the end of round 37, sorry, I had said end of 36 a few minutes ago, but this is, we just finished the end of round 37. So at the end of round 37, I now have 14 stitches, and now we're going to decrease every stitch all the way around. Okay, so I'm just going to take out my stitch marker, because basically we're just aiming to sew in the top of our, to close in the top of our head here, okay? So here's what we're going to do. Every single stitch all the way around is going to be a decrease. So that means I'm going to insert right away into this stitch and pull through, and go right into the next, pull through there, and then pull through all three to resolve. And again, decrease into the next. Oops, it's going to get a little bit tighter here, and especially with the cotton yarn. It's really grabby yarn or catchy yarn, so, which is good, but sometimes makes stitching it up a little tricky. So I'm going to decrease. Whoops. Oh no, that was correct. Pull through. And so at this point, I'm just decreasing. The aim here is to close the top up entirely. So we don't even have to really worry about counting much anymore, because we're going to keep doing these decreases until we close the gap at the top here. So 1 and 2, and believe it or not, we are almost there. And again, 1 and 2, and it starts getting really fiddly as the opening gets tighter. Okay, and 1 and 2, and I think we can do one more in there. Oops. Pull through and see if you can just snuggle it in there. And let's see if we can just sneak one more in here. It's getting pretty tight, and this is most certainly, oops, the last decrease. Now you don't have to take it this far, you can just weave in your ends, but I like a challenge, so that was my last one. Okay, so what we're going to do now, so there you have it, the body. Okay, so I'm just going to snip my yarn here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail. And then I'm going to grab my yarn needle. Just going to fasten that off. And what I'll do is I'll just weave in my end here and I'll just solidify that closure. So I am just going to pick up a stitch and just try and get it so that I feel pretty good about, there we go, cinching that final top in. And as you can see, like you can see the color of my stuffing. So if I had, would have been probably a little bit more preferable if I had some white t-shirts or white socks, but I just didn't happen to have any on hand. And frankly, I'm not all that picky because it's going to be a draft blocker and it'll be sitting on a window ledge, so it'll still look cute either way. So what I'm doing here is I'm partly trying to hide my tail, but I'm also using it as a way to solidify the closure at the top. So I'm just going to weave it in a bunch of different directions just to kind of lock it in place. And a few times really should do it. That's the great thing about cotton yarn, is that it definitely holds its place. Once you've woven it in a few times, it sticks. So I'm just going to do a couple of more stitches here and there. And then when you're satisfied and you feel like it's securely closed up and it looks good, then what you want to do is you just want to hide your tail, and I will just insert it right in through here, and maybe I'll come out the side here, and that's it. Okay, so now I'll just take my hook and I'll try to grab it and just, you can see that it's getting fed down until it's gone, and it'll stay hidden. Here we go. And that's it. And here we have, I probably could have put a little bit more stuffing, but I am happy with the body of my bunny. So he's got his little buttons on the back so we can secure the legs. And now we are just going to work on the ears, and we are going to be good to go. All right, guys, we're now ready to make the bunny's ears, the final touch on our project here. Now I've already made one, so this is how it's going to turn out. And of course, I've left a long tail to sew it in. So the idea is that we're going to then sew the bunny ears on top, and your bunny will come out looking like that. Okay, so here we go, the final installment. So we're going to take our yarn and we're going to start with a cinch circle. Okay, let me just bring this down a little bit here. So you'll start with a cinch circle, and if you need to take it a little bit slower, I have a tutorial on the cinch circle as well. But there's many different ways you can do it, but this is how I do it. So you've got your cinch circle, you've secured it with a chain one, and so we are going to continue working with single crochets. So we are now going to single crochet 6 times into the circle. Okay, so a lot of times people would count this chain one as one, but because it's so tight, I am going to just start counting this as your first single crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 6. Then I'm just going to count back to make sure. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Perfect. So now what I want to do is take my little short tail here, and I'm just going to cinch this shut nice and tight. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to continue to work in the round. Okay, so now a lot of times people would slip stitch this shut. What we're going to do now is we're going to do 1 single crochet, and then we're going to increase in every second stitch. Okay, so we're going to take this from 6 stitches up to 9. So instead, sometimes people would do 2 single crochets in each stitch around for that second round, but we're going to go right away and we're going to increase every second stitch. So we want to create a different shape. So see how it's not actually I guess a perfect circle, we would call it. So the shape we want to create is a little bit more elongated. So we're going to jump right from 6 stitches to 9. So I'm going to find my very next stitch, which is right there. That's the first stitch. Now this one's definitely most likely going to be a little bit tight. So sometimes what I do is I just get a little yarn needle. I just loosen it up a little bit. And then I insert my hook, and there we go. So this is going to be the first single crochet. And what I'm going to do is right away I'm going to use my stitch marker just for these first few rows. And then we'll be off to the races. So there's the first one. And now into the very next stitch, which is this one right here, we're going to work 2 single crochets. Now this first round here will be a little bit testy because these stitches are tight because we only did 6 stitches around and they are single crochets on top of that. Okay, so we've done 2, and now in the next stitch we're only going to do 1. And now in the following stitch, we will increase there and we will put 2. So we have 1 and 2. Okay, and then in the next stitch, I just have 1. And in the next stitch, we are going to place 2. So we're increasing every second stitch. Okay, so this is the end of round 2. We should now have 9 stitches. So I'm just going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Perfecto. Okay. Now we're going to go into round 3, and now what we're going to do is we are going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches and increase in the third. This should take our 9 stitches up to 12 at the end of round 3. So I'm just going to take the stitch marker out for a second. And I'm going to go into the first stitch. So that's 1. I'm just going to put my stitch marker back here. Okay. And I'm going to single crochet into the next one. It's nice and snug. And now into the next one, I'm going to do an increase. So that means I'm going to do 2 single crochets. If this will let me get in there. There we go. Oh. So there's 1, and there is 2. Okay. And again, this one's going to be 1 single crochet. This one's going to be 1 single crochet. And see how it's starting to curl up already, which is what we want, but we want to turn it out this way. So we'll work on the outside. And now this one is the increase. And I think there was a join here, so it's going to be, there we go. So there's 1, and back in the same stitch there's 2, and then we do 1 in here. These first few rounds are really snug, so you just have to be patient. There's 2, and there's the last stitch here, and we're going to place 2 single crochets in there. Okay, and 2. And we should have, this is the end of round 3, we should have a total of 12 stitches. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yes, because that was the first one. Very good. Okay, end of round 3, we have 12. We're going to continue to increase here. So round 4, we are now going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, and then we're going to do an increase. This should bring us up to a total of 15 stitches at the end of round 4. So I'm just going to do the first set with you. So we are working on the ear right now of our bunny blocker. So I'm going to do the first stitch, and then I'm just going to replace the stitch markers so I can remember where I am. So that's 1, and we want to do 3. So there's 2, and here's 3, and now we'll do the increase. Okay, so I just have to snuggle it in there. So there's 1, and there's 2. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way around till we get to the end of round 4, and you'll have 15 stitches. So you're going to count 1, 2, and 3, and then an increase there in the 4th stitch. Okay, I'll meet you at the end of round 4. Okay, so at the end of round 4, your work is certainly curling up right away. And so that's why we skipped a layer of increasing after that first round there to give it that cone effect right away. Okay, so you can see this is similar to the bottom of that one there. Okay, so we now have 15 stitches at the end of round 4, and we're going to go into round 5 and increase for 1 more round before we just continue on straight forward. So we're still just creating the curvature at the bottom of the ear of our bunny. Okay, so now for round 5, we're going to do 4 single crochet stitches, 1 into each of the next 4, and then we're going to increase after that. Okay, so here we go. So just, there's 1, and then I just want to keep this in here so I know I've got my count going properly. There's 1, and then here is 2, 3, 4, and then the increase. So we're going to place 2 single crochets into this stitch. Okay, so you're going to continue this pattern all the way back to your stitch marker, and you can see there's the tip of the ear being developed. Okay, and you will end up with 18 stitches. We'll see you there. Okay, so I've come to the end of round 5 and I have 18 stitches in total, and that is it for that's it for increasing for a long time now actually. So what we're going to do now is we're going to place 1 single crochet into each and every single stitch all the way around. So we will continue to have 18 stitches, and we're going to do this for 18 rows. Actually, I think it might be a total of 19 rows, right? Because so this is going to be round 6. So I'm just going to begin here. Pretty straightforward, and I'm sure that you've caught on to this, the single crochet stitch. I'm going to insert there. So this is round 6. This is a terrible stitch marker. So this is round 6. So in round 6, all we're doing is placing 1 single crochet into each and every stitch all the way around. Then once we've completed round 6, we will continue on with that pattern for an additional 18 rows. Okay, so that'll give you a total of 19 rows of these single crochets going up, because now what we want to do is we want it to build upward. So if we look at the bunny ear that I've already made, so we're about here right now, and so now we're not going to increase anymore, and that's what's going to create this curling up effect, and we will grow our ear all the way up. Okay, and it's not going to be stuffed at all. It's just, this is the design of the ear itself. Okay, so go ahead and do that all the way, 18 stitches continuously, and then I will meet you at the end of round 24, and then around 25, which is about here, where you can see we're going to start decreasing again. Okay, so this will take you probably a few minutes. I will see you back here when you are ready to start row 25. Okay, so I have come to the end of my 24th stitch. So you can see it works up really nicely and, you know, fairly quickly. So if I compare it to my other one, that's about right. We're right about ready to start our decreases. So I can just take this little guy out here. Okay, so going into a row, or round, I should say, 25, we are going to decrease into every 5th stitch. Yeah, into every, I think that's 5th stitch that I wrote down. Okay, well, we're going to find out. So we're going to take that out. So we're going to do 1 single crochet into the 1st stitch. So we have 1, and let me put my marker back here so I'll know where we're at. Oh, I have to get new stitch markers. These are terrible. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and here is the 5th. We don't want to resolve it yet. We insert, and now we resolve all 3. So we've done 4 single crochets, and into the 5th we decrease. So we're going to do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's the 5th, and then 1 right next to it. So we decrease these together, yarn over, and pull through. Okay, so you're going to do that all the way till you get back to your stitch marker at the end of round 25. This should then bring you back down to 15 stitches down from 18. So I'll meet you at the end and we'll make sure that we count these. Okay, I have come to the end of round 25 and I'm down to 15 stitches. Now for round 26 and 27, we are just going to do one single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So we don't want to create as much of a dramatic decrease inward like we did with the body. Okay, so I'm just going to take that out. So for round 26 and round 27, you're going to just do one single crochet all the way around into each and every stitch, and you will still have 15 stitches at the end of it all. So go ahead and do that, and I'll meet you at the end of round 27. Okay, and I'm just in my last stitch of round 27. Okay, so now as we go into round 28, we are going to go and decrease again. So we are going to decrease into every fourth stitch. Okay, so I'm just going to take that out. That's my first stitch. So we are going to single crochet into the very first one. So this is one. And just put that back in. It's one. There's 2, 3, and now I'm going to decrease into the fourth and the one right next to it. We bring those 2 stitches together. Okay, so you should be well versed in this decreasing business after all this increasing and decreasing in this project. So we're going to do that all the way around. You're going to decrease into every fourth stitch. So you're going to single crochet once, twice, 3 times, and in the fourth and the fifth one you're going to decrease them together. So I'll meet you down at the end of round 28. You will end up with 12 stitches. Okay, we're at the end of round 28. And then we're going to repeat what we did in round 26 and 27, and that is just do one single crochet all the way around. So for 2 rows now, we're not going to do any decreasing. And I counted to make sure I do now have 12 stitches remaining in my rounds. So now when I start to compare it to my first one, we're almost there. Okay, so for round 29 and round 30, it is just going to be one single crochet into each and every stitch all the way around, and then I will meet you at the beginning of round 31. All right, guys, so this is the end of round 30. Now for round 31, which is actually going to become a row, what we're going to do is we're going to just create a little lip. So see here how I just did a little bit extra so it kind of sits over. And so we're going to sew it so it's on this, the lip is on the top and it creates a little bit more of a flop effect. So depending on where your row ends, see my round ended a little bit further in here and I want to do at least half of this round. So you may only need 4 stitches, but I'm going to do 7 because of the way my ear is folded. Mind you, I could just adjust it to here, but I'll just leave it as is. So I'm going to do 7 single crochets into the next round. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I think that should be okay. Perfect. So see, it's created a little bit of a lip on this side here, which is just perfect because when I sew it to my bunny head, so if I bring his head here, see that lip is going to sit on top, which is going to create, oh, that's going to look adorable. It's going to create that little kind of jump over his head. So we are done. We are done our bunny ear. So if I just sit it one on top of the other, we've got a good match here. Fantastico. So I am just going to leave a bit of a long tail for sewing it in. I always would rather leave it longer than shorter. And then I am just going to pull that through to fasten off. And now we're ready to sew on our ears. I'm excited. So all our parts are now done. So we have got our 2 ears and our body, and the legs I have sitting up on my ledge, my window ledge right there, waiting to be attached to the body. And I have to say, these bunny blockers work fantastic. So let's get on to sewing this onto our bunny here. So the main thing to do is, well, you can do it a couple of ways. I like to kind of set it so that I can see what it's going to look like. And this is absolutely going to be adorable. So I'm going to keep mine fairly close together. And you may actually want to secure these with a safety pin so you can kind of see where they are and where you'd like them. Some people might like them a little bit more to the side. I kind of like mine a little bit closer on the top. I like that look. So I'm going to keep mine about there. And maybe a little further back. There we go. Okay. Now again, you can like use a stitch marker on there or what have you. I generally just kind of play it by ear. I kind of eyeball it myself. So I'm just going to thread my yarn here. And so I'm going to roughly place it right about there. That's where I remember I wanted to put it. So now I just make sure I get nice and comfy and have a good spot to settle the body. And now I'm just going to pick up a stitch from the top of the bunny's head. I'm just going to kind of insert it pretty much anywhere. Actually, I'm going to do it from here so that I can really get a good feel. And then I just make sure that I go through those 2 top stitches there, and I just make it nice and snug there. And then I'll go and pick up another stitch in the bottom of the head here and go into the next stitch. So I do want to make sure I get into every stitch of the ear. I want to take advantage of keeping it nice and secure. And this is just a basic whip stitch. You know, you're just inserting. Hopefully you can see that there. Inserting anywhere along here where I can pick up a stitch, and then I insert it into the next stitch of the bunny ear. Oops, this is a really long tail, but that's how I like it. Okay, and now I'm going to find another stitch along here and pick up the next 2 stitches on the ear and, you know, pull it snug, but, you know, it doesn't need to be too tight. There's not going to be a lot of wear and tear. Now, of course, the beauty about this project is you can actually detach this little guy from its legs. So if you have a little person visiting or something like that, it is squishy enough and kids safe enough that they could play with it. But, you know, for the most part, if you're using it for decor as well as you're, you know, blocking the wind, you don't have to worry too much about having to really secure it super tightly. One of these whip stitches should do. And I'm going to do that one more time, pick up a stitch and go into the last set of stitches here. And there you go. So if I pull up here, that is Perfecto. That's exactly what I wanted. I just have a little fluff coming out there. Yeah, so that's exactly what I wanted. The effect of kind of having the ear fold down over nicely, and that little lip just allowed for some room for the ear to sit like that. Adorable. So I'm just going to now weave in this end back and forth a few times. I'm going to hide it somewhere along the top of the head here. And then I will snip my yarn and do my other ear. So now that we've done one, you kind of get the gist as to how we're going to secure it and fasten it to the top of the head. Now some of these stitches are pretty tight in here, so you just got to feel around for it, be a little patient, and you will find your way there. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to hide in that in. And then my next ear will be approximately right there. So that is perfect. So go ahead and sew in your 2 ears, and then I will meet you at the end, and we'll talk a little bit about any embellishments you may want to add on to your little guy. And we're going to attach him to his legs and we'll be good to go. Okay guys, and here we go. Here is Mr. Bunny with the ears on and the body all nice and stuffed. Now I realized that the buttons, I had to make sure that my ears were going on so that I could keep the buttons in the back. So that's why I've made my ears come forward a little bit more. And so now I've got his legs here all ready to go. So if I just turn him over, and that's why we had that little buttonhole made here. So I'm just going to fasten that on. I have his next set of legs here. Heavy legs because they're filled with those glass stones in there. So there we go. So see, that's how it can attach and detach. And then we turn him over. Just extend his legs a little bit here so you can get the gist of what's happening here. And that's what our little bunny looks like. So his legs will sit up against the windowsill. And there he is. Super, super adorable. I love how this came out. Now, you can just leave it as is, or you can add some embellishments here. So if I just pull him a little closer, like I think I might put some buttons on for eyes. So I've got these cute little buttons. So see how it already kind of gives him a little bit more of a personality. So I have these in blue, and I also have found these cute little buttons at Michael's. So I have them in yellow as well. But I think, actually it looks cute too with 2 different colors. But I think I might go with the blue. They just pop out a little bit more. That's going to look so adorable. And you can do things like even add a hat on top or a little bow. So if you might kind of want to, not cover up, but cover up. Yeah, cover up all that seams there. You might want to put a little bow on them or whatever you like, or just leave it as is. I think it's super cute the way our little bunny is. And there we go. You have your bunny blocker, your bunny draft blocker. So this is what he looks like. Long legs like that, and super, super cute. All right, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial. It's been a process, lots of little working parts, but I think it was so, so worth it. And if you have any questions, because I know there's a lot of little pieces and little parts we went through, definitely leave us a comment in the comment box, or just you can email me directly at info@crochetcrafty.com, and I'm always happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you so much for coming along on this great little crochet journey today. And if you like all of our tutorials and you like watching some of our stitch session conversations, make sure to click that subscribe button. And share it with your friends. It's absolutely free, and it's fun to have people to share this with. So Yeah, so that's about it. And I look forward to sharing more crochet fun with you guys next week. We upload every Wednesday, don't forget. And stay warm and happy crocheting. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye.